Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
I got to talk. I got to tell what I feel. I got to talk about my life as I see it.
Hey, what's up, Mike?
Phil, it is great to be with you as always. I mean, what a day. What a day, guys. I know a lot of you have tuned in here today to listen to us. It's the long-awaited podcast. We've been kind of hyping it, I guess, Phil, for 3 or 4 months now. And well, I mean, in fairness, this election process has been going on for what seems like a lifetime. I don't know if you've noticed, but the election cycle is virtually starts as soon as somebody's elected.
Yeah.
And right. So, anyways, we today's podcast is going to be 100% the election, the 2024 presidential election. That's what we're talking about today. So, if you're not here to listen to that, move right on and go listen to, I don't know, somebody else, another big podcaster like Joe Rogan or, oh, wait a minute. No, you can't go there either because that's all the 2024 election as well. So, in any case, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. All right, Mike, how do you want to start this? This is our first one, so we're kind of like off the cuff here.
Of course. Well, all right. There's a couple things that I want to discuss before we get going into what we think is going to happen Tuesday. Now, you guys we've waited to the last minute. I'm going to give you some behind the scenes here about our podcast. Typically, Phil and I record on Tuesday afternoon at 2:00 at Pacific Coast time. And we are now recording this on Thursday, and your guys are going to be listening to this in a matter of hours. And we waited to the last second for some pretty obvious reasons, I think. Not the least of which is, I mean, literally every 5 minutes, some new news story comes out or something else happens that may affect this election. So anyways, I just wanted to give you the background and insight as to, how we're recording this. I want to talk about some of the things that we talked a little bit or a lot about politics on last week's podcast as well. And obviously there's been a bunch of news stories that happened this week since we last sat down with you guys out there. So, Phil, where do we start? There were some big happenings.
So let's start with let's do it kind of sort of chronologically.
Okay.
Let's start out with when last week's podcast we ended talking about Joe Rogan's podcast.
That's right, Joe Rogan's podcast.
That's transpired now. We've both watched it. What do you think, Mike?
So before I completely answer that question, I also want to say that I feel like I might be the most, probably with the exception of you, be the most educated in America, and I'm not even in America right now, I'm in Mexico, on this election. I have literally consumed newspapers, online, podcasts, YouTube. It goes on and on. I have listened to everything from as far left as MSNBC and some of the left-wing podcasters, all the way over to the right side, and everything in between. So,
Mike,
I feel like I'm super educated. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, I have messed up my YouTube algorithm because I have been listening to some people who have like 2 subscribers. I've been listening to people who have like 2 million subscribers and everything in between. I've discovered a bunch of news sources that I didn't even know it existed, websites. And Mike, to be honest with you, it's a vanity thing. I didn't want to come on this show and sound stupid. I may come off dumb, but I didn't want to be stupid.
Yep.
So
Agreed. If you could see my podcast studio right now, I literally have an iPad tablet on my left. I've got my big screen on the right. I've got a notebook down here below, and I've got the podcast computer in front of me. So I got a lot of things to look at.
Well, I've got two screens here, and then I've got the laptop, which is how we work the Zoom together.
That's
and
right.
Each screen, I have information from different news sources: Washington Post, New York Post, Seattle Times, and a few others.
So on that note, let's start with Joe Rogan's podcast. So, the reason I believe it's so important is that for those of you that don't follow Joe Rogan, he is the largest podcaster in the world, number one. He has largely stayed, I would call it, out of the political arena in most cases. He oftentimes has UFC fighters or pro wrestlers or musicians and artists and comics and whatnot on. And obviously Joe Rogan, it was funny. I had a quote, which I actually wrote down over here. 15 years ago, could you ever, Phil, imagine that you'd have the host of Fear Factor and the host of The Apprentice on a podcast together? Think about that.
Well, no, I could have seen those two on a podcast, but not one of them running for and has been the president.
Exactly. And that's my point. So I think that from a standpoint of the podcast, and by the way, as we sit right now, I believe on YouTube alone, there has been 41 million views on the Donald Trump podcast on the Joe Rogan show. And that's just on YouTube.
And that's why it was important to kind of distinguish who Joe Rogan is and why somebody would be anxious to get on there. And it also puts a microscope on Harris saying no or not going on the show. But yeah. I just want to give some numbers to give people an understanding. And I'm giving information this is a place where media people look up personalities to find out what's going on with them. Rogan's 14.5 million followers on Spotify, 17.6 million on YouTube. And they say many of them are young male, low propensity voters that the Trump campaign is hoping to get to the polls. So not only is it a large number, one of the largest numbers on the largest number on a podcast, but also his demographic are people who don't normally vote. So he's actually speaking to some people who could increase numbers. The majority of the time, they're basically talking to the home team.
That's right. I know I'm jumping around a little bit here because we said we were going to go in chronological order. I just got done, or not completely done because it came out this morning. J.D. Vance also recorded on the Joe Rogan podcast, and that came out this morning. So you guys are listening. It came out yesterday for you. So now you've got both the presidential and the vice presidential candidates on the Republican side going on the Joe Rogan podcast. So that's big news. And I think what Phil pointed out, in contrast, is that Kamala did not go on the podcast. And from according to Joe Rogan, and we don't really have any reason not to believe him, it was because two things. She wanted, him to travel to her. And Joe Rogan, answered that very simply. He goes, I play home games. Everybody comes to me. That's just the way it works. It's not biased. It's not discriminatory. Everybody that's been on my podcast comes into my studio in Austin and does it. And then the second thing that I guess that she was hesitant about was the fact that she only wanted to do an hour, and his format is typically, if you look through all of his, which I did, I've listened to him over the years, but not a ton. And I look back and I do notice that his average length of his podcast is between 2.5 and 3 hours. So that's pretty much normal for a Joe Rogan podcast. In fact, the Trump one was about 3 hours, and I believe the JD Vance one was a little bit longer than that. So, let's talk about for a second why this is important to the Trump campaign. And I think you mentioned, Phil, he largely, not all of his audience, but a large portion of his audience are younger males. And that's obviously the fear factor, the UFC background, his comedian, his style of comedy, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of maybe the reason for that. And I'm going to talk about this when I make my election prediction a little bit later in this podcast. But clearly, those people, if they can be mobilized to vote by Trump, is going to make a difference.
Absolutely.
And I could answer the reason I think, and I'm just going to throw this out here, the reason I think Harris did not go on there is I think her net game sum from that is not going to be, I don't know that it's going to be as effective, right? Only because, you know, his crowd largely isn't necessarily Trump supporters, and nor is it Harris supporters, but it is, like you said, potentially younger, maybe undecided voters, and definitely people that are less likely to turn out at the poll. And I think that her ability to convince them, primarily because they're male, is less.
I think that venue would expose her. It's like if I'm talking to a group of people in at a charity event and we're sitting down eating and we're talking about hunger, people will pretty much accept anything I got to say about hunger because they're not feeling it. But if I was to sit down with a bunch of people and there was no food and they were all starving and I talked about hunger and I'm sitting up there eating, it's a stark contrast, and I read through. The point I'm making is she's normally talking to people when she says, you know, I'm from the middle class and blah, blah, blah. Well, it's going to be a lot of people on that podcast, they ain't from the middle class, and they want to be in the middle class. They're looking at the middle class as high class. So a lot of things that she normally says would actually anger the audience, I believe.
Let's you know, you bring up a good point here. The other thing with that is that you know, whether you like or support Trump or not, I believe is non-relevant to this. And this, take it from somebody that sat down and listened to 3 hours of Donald Trump and Joe Rogan speak. They just had a conversation.
Right.
And Trump came off as incredibly normal, which might sound weird to you, particularly if you don't follow outside of the news like Phil and I have for the last month. They just shot the shit basically about, you know, his assassination attempt, wrestling, McDonald's. I mean, you name it. They were all over the place. But he just sat down there as a normal human being, which, by the way, Joe Rogan said on that podcast. He said, you know, I'd love to have Kamala Harris come on, and I'm going to talk to her just like a human being, because that's his style, you know, regardless of what team you're playing on. And, you know, but Trump, to me anyways, didn't come across as his bombastic self, didn't come across as a billionaire from New York City. He just came across as a dude sitting in a studio. You know what I mean?
That's a big deal, bro.
It's a big deal. And it's particularly a big deal to those that may not be voting because they're not fervent Donald Trump cult followers who are already voting for him. And they don't already have a preconceived idea that he's the worst human being on planet Earth, because if you're kind of sitting on the sidelines and you're a younger male, as an example, which is his demographic, you're going, interesting. This guy's kind of okay. He's normal. He doesn't sound weird. He's not saying anything crazy. And that format works really well for Donald Trump.
Mike, if you ever read sales books or ever taken a sales class or been in sales, one of the first things you learn is the actual product is pretty much secondary to making a sale. It's selling yourself.
Yep.
People generally don't buy from someone they don't like. And the Joe Rogan podcast put Harris in a position where you would probably not like her enough for her to sell what she's selling.
Yep.
You understand what I mean?
I totally understand. Yep. Yep. And by the way, it's not just Joe Rogan's podcasts. I mean, Trump has gone on a number of other podcaster, formats, as has JD Vance. Kamala has gone on a few, but not that many. And I believe the big one that she went on with Alex was. I could be wrong on this, but I watched some of it. It was not nearly as long, for sure. But in fairness, that's not her format on that podcast, anyways. So there's the difference, right?
And I was going to say, you remember Harris was on that podcast called "Who's Your Daddy" or "Call Me Daddy" or something like
Alex,
that.
Yeah,
That's pretty much the only show where she attempted somewhat to do a little freestyling and be on something that's cultural.
Sure.
And she looked like the principal at the prom.
Right. Yep. So that's not the format. So, anyways, to wrap it up with the Joe Rogan thing, the piece is that JD Vance is now going on it today, and he, in my opinion, of the 4 presidential candidates and vice presidential candidates, is by far the most effective speaker. He actually, and I'm going to apologize to you guys out here because unfortunately there's only so many hours of the day. I couldn't jam it in before we started recording here. I didn't watch the whole thing, but he articulates so well, and he, from the parts I saw, came off as a average Joe, normal guy with young kids, and just telling it like it is. So,
Mike, I don't agree with everything on either side of this election. So no matter who I'm listening to, there are things they're saying. I'm like, oh, he's lying or she's lying, or I disagree or I agree. JD Vance, they'll ask him something where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to hear his answer on this. They got him. And I'm like in disagreement, and I'm disagreeing with what he's saying. And I'm like, wow, good answer.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
so anyways,
he's almost too polished though. That's a problem too.
Yeah, but okay, let's talk about that for a second. Barack Obama is probably one of the best speakers in our lifetime, is super polished, and he was very effective at it. So I don't know that you can discredit that.
Well, you gave the answer as to why I think that way. People saw Barack and they don't want another.
Fair. Okay.
The only difference is they suntan. They as far as the way they talk and answer questions and stuff, that super duper polished. When Obama did it, we hadn't seen one that polished in a long time, so it's stuck out.
Right.
But now that we've been fooled by one, I think a lot of people who aren't first-time voters polished. That's why everybody else ain't polished in this. That's why we got the other guy, Walsh. They got the okie dokie guy on the other side. They thought that was the guy to get.
Right.
If you even just watch pop culture, TV shows, movies, and the way that they're written now, the good-looking guy who always says the right thing, that's not the popular storyline anymore.
True. Yeah, that's true.
And
all right, so
go ahead.
But no, I was gonna. Yeah, I agree. So, it's a format, right? So we've been talking about podcasts, and then we have what comes up next, Phil, this week in our news cycle is the closing statements from both of the candidates.
So the thing that sticks out to me more so than anything else is Harris is outside doing it, and Biden, at the same time she's doing her speech, is in his office. I don't know if he was tweeting or TikToking or whatever, but he was on there messing up her whole speech. He caused the garbage controversy, calling people who are Trump supporters garbage. So I just thought that was the craziest thing. That's a notable historic thing, that you're out there running for president, and and he's in there literally destroying your chances.
Well, you can be sure as shit that right now, as we speak, Joe Biden is locked in his house in the basement in shackles. There is zero chance that you're going to see this guy out until after Tuesday. There's no way that they're going to let him out. Now, to be fair, he is been known for his entire career as, Joe Gaff, right? I mean, he's just puts his foot in his mouth no matter what. So that's nothing new. However, the timing of it is insanity. How they got, but before we go down that road too far, I got to say, the Madison Square Garden show, I know we try to make it a family channel, but this Tony Hinchcliffe guy, dude, he's a fucking asshole. I don't know any other way to say that. The guy is an idiot and should never have been invited. I mean, first of all, whoever made a decision to put a roast comic on a political stage, I don't know whether they've been fired or whatnot, or who made that decision, but that's asinine as it is. And then to pick him, I don't even think the guy's funny, to be honest with you. I'm not super familiar with him, so I went back online and watched him do a Tom Brady one and a couple other things. Dude, he's never funny.
So I have different sides. I have opposing opinions.
Okay, I want to hear it.
Okay. The first one is just some people they're not in touch with the crowd. And they don't have that kind of intelligence. And
which, by the way, not to cut you off there, but when he said those jokes, the crowd didn't even like him.
And I only think it was because of the setting. I'm into stand-up comedy. I used to go to stand-up comedy a lot growing up. I mean, I'm into, like, not just the jokes, but the behind the scenes of how you get to the final moment of telling the joke. And to me, that sounded like a joke that he has told before, or has told something in that range of jokes, and he gets a laugh. And he brought his stage show to a convention where they're not really looking for a true comedian. They're not looking for you to actually find the negative and make a joke out of it or something like that. I believe that joke actually would have worked if it was not at a political convention.
Yeah, as long as you weren't in Miami or somewhere where there was a lot of Puerto Ricans or whatnot, probably, yeah.
So I'm looking at it as a guy that's just working a job, and it was just a guy not qualified to do the job.
Yes.
I'm not looking at him as a bad person or anything like that. I don't think he was trying to do anything bad. That was his moment. He wasn't qualified for it, and he failed.
Well, it's his style of comedy, because if you
but there's people more raunchier than him, and they would have gotten up there, and they are professional. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I've studied comics. Take your worst comic. When he comes to town, he'll be on the morning show of that particular town, and he cleans up all his jokes that he's going to tell that night.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. It was out of place, wrong place, wrong time.
He's not talented. A talented comedian knows how to reel it back, and
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say. He came off as not talented. He's not, to me, he wasn't funny. I watched some of his other stuff. He never seemed that funny. He's not that good. I guess it's the bottom line.
that's what I'm saying. He's just not
that good.
He's just not a good comedian.
No.
Because I believe that that a good comedian could have covered that material, and it could have been funny.
Yep. Exactly.
A comedian can make anything funny.
Sure.
Like for instance, roast. If you've seen political roast,
yep,
they'll literally talk about all the bad things that person.
Well, not to mention, I mean, look, Donald Trump just did one. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. To me, Donald Trump is a whole lot funnier than Tony Hinchcliffe.
That's making my point. He just ain't funny. He did not know it, because there is a pollution issue going on in Puerto Rico, and that's what he was making a joke of. He just didn't know how to do it.
Right. So okay, that's one piece of the Madison Square Garden, I'll call it incident, right? There were others. He wasn't the only one that got up on that stage. Let me backtrack 1 second. If Donald Trump was the only person that took that stage at Madison Square Garden, the event, in my opinion, would have been a success. Meaning that nothing that Donald Trump said was overly any different than what he always says.
You don't think it was a success?
No. I think the outcome of that event is being 100% overshadowed by that Tony's jokes
and the Hitler thing.
The Hitler thing. I mean, who else did he have up there? Tucker Carlson comes off as a whack job as well. And I listen to him, and I think he's at times a fairly intelligent guy as well. And he doesn't. It was like he didn't know where he was either. He starts with this crazy laugh, and he sounds like he's, an idiot. That's the best way to describe it.
This goes back to the point we were discussing earlier. He's like a Harris. He's used to being around a certain demographic of people. He's not in touch with the world in real life. He's not.
Well, look at him.
He couldn't just walk into any bar. Like when we
Tucker Carlson's a yacht club guy. Look at what he wears.
Just like when we're traveling, we'll go to the most divest bar and just walk in and get along with everybody.
Yep. Tucker
ain't going. He can't.
No.
Somebody would slap him upside the back of his head.
That's right. For sure. Yep. So when you combine, and I don't even know some of the other guys that were up there. There were a few other ones that were, and then no. In summary, I don't think that was a very successful closing argument. It got overshadowed by a bunch of stuff because look, when I woke up the next morning, the number one news story was Donald Trump, continues his racist, bullshit and everything else. That's what they got out of it, right? And I get it. That's a press spin, but I think that's what. Now, having said that, if you fast forward a couple days, the fact that Tony Hinchcliffe said, Puerto Rico's trash, and now Donald Trump rides around and only Donald Trump could do this. Somehow he manages to put together in 20 minutes, gets a rental of what looks to be a brand new trash truck, gets it all logoed up with Donald Trump, Make America Great Again, and gets the outfit and the uniform and gets in this dump, into the trash truck and drives around. Kudos to that. Man, that's what came out of this whole thing. So if you factor in a couple days later, the event was a roaring success, but clearly that's by accident. But Donald Trump has so much charisma and we talked about this last week, charisma is not necessarily positive, but he has a ton of charisma. That he is the one guy that can pull off. He's a showman. This was made for TV.
Mike, if I was to just sit you in a chair and force you to watch 24 hours of footage for the last 2 years of Harris or the 2 years of Trump, and I made you watch it, and you had to watch it, right? And the volume was turned down, you would be like, this is a great guy, because you just constantly see him around people, dressed like the people, interacting with the people, and you'd see a bunch of her always isolated, not with people. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. He is always surrounded by, whether it's garbage men or steel workers or whatever he's doing. He's, and this is why one of the reasons why the subliminal
is stronger than the actual word sometimes. That can impact your thinking. You constantly seeing one person. That's why she's not working. She doesn't touch you in any kind of way unless you are.
Okay, but now let me give her some credit. Her closing statement was genius. Okay, I'm going to give that. It was genius because it was in front of the
I agree with that.
Well, in Washington D.C., where Trump did his January 6th thing, and she spoke at it as if she was elected president of the United States. I listened to her whole speech, and she talked about uniting, and she talked about, bringing, all the ideas together and having everybody have a seat at the table and blah, 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 all this stuff. So, but she, just like Trump, was sabotaged by Joe Biden. You could wonder, you could be a conspiracy theorist. I don't know. Half of me thinks that Joe Biden did it on purpose because he can't stand her. And the other half thinks that Joe Biden is just crazy and senile, and that's why he doesn't. Why on earth was he even on, TikTok or whatever he was doing? Why was he even doing that?
Oh, bro, that's like you being at your daughter's wedding and you in the bathroom doing social media.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to say. Shouldn't he been tuned in? I mean, I guess she hadn't maybe quite started yet, but I'd have my TV ready to go. I'd have my popcorn out and my beer in my hand. I'd be ready to. I'm not on. He's sitting in front of a desk like he's talking. I don't know who. I mean, to me, it makes it seem like he doesn't like her, and he was going to do one last more thing to sabotage her.
Well, all the rumors have always been since when they first picked her as the VP that he didn't like her and that it was a move to she was visually appealing, not in a sexual way, but to see a woman of color. They specifically picked her for that. So, and they always said he never wanted her. So that's old news actually. He's never liked her. He's never wanted her. And he probably dislikes her from both sides of the coin. One, he just don't like her. And
at this point, she stole his job.
And then if I was the VP for 8 years behind Barack Obama, I would feel some kind of way toward my VP too. Because he just basically had did you ever see the movie Office? And the guy they didn't know was not working there anymore. He was in the corner. Right. Yep. That's how he was.
Yeah.
With Barack.
Funny. Yep.
I mean, he didn't get invited to no parties, nothing.
Right. Yeah, he's a gap master.
So he has that, and then he has another person that's kind of being spun as another Barack Obama, the female version. So he probably despises her from so many ways.
Yeah.
And most people would. If you had been under the president and been treated as nothing, and then you become the president and your VP is being treated better than you, I would feel some kind of way.
Yeah, that's fair. So, okay. So we talked about the closing statements. We've talked about sort of what they've been doing this last week. I spent some time watching, as I mentioned earlier, everybody, and I made a particularly I made it a kind of a point to pay attention to some more liberal. Well, what I listened to was a bunch of liberal talking points and a bunch of conservative right-wing talking points, personalities, let's just say. So I'm talking about like Van Jones, and I'm talking about Bill Maher, and I'm talking about Whoopi Goldberg, and I'm talking about Tucker Carlson and what's his name, Bill O'Reilly, who used to work on Fox, and Megyn Kelly, and all these people. And because what I'm always interested in is what their insight is and how they're spinning it, and if they are indeed spinning it. And I got to tell you, like Van Jones, who I've never actually liked. I agreed with him on a bunch of things that he said this week, though. He's actually seems to have maybe he's mellowed out in his older age or something, but he's, he had an interesting conversation. They were talking about, so the surrogates is, by the way, that's another thing we need to talk about here today. I know we mentioned it last week, but like Van Jones was talking about Elon Musk. And he brought up an interesting point. Like, here's a guy that has a bunch of followers that a lot of people are going to gravitate towards. And you got to remember, Elon Musk, last election, supported Andrew Yang, a Democrat, right? And, he hasn't always been, quote, a Trumper. And, I think Van Jones brought up a couple good points about Elon Musk, is that, he's going to drive a crowd probably more effectively towards Trump than Mark Cuban is towards Kamala Harris. What do you think about that?
Well, in the early stages of this podcast, we were following Tesla a lot and the Tesla truck and things like that. So I learned a lot about Tesla. And Tesla has like this huge international cult of people who they follow the technology and they follow Elon Musk. And I think he has, out of all of the surrogates that we talk about, I'm thinking he's in the top 3 of actual true influence. And I mean that as that people not only listen to him and like him, but he can really persuade them to vote one way or another. I'm thinking he's in the top 3, and I'm not even sure who the top 2 would be above him.
Well,
he's gotten the world to drive a different way. To think about mobility and AI in a different way.
Well, younger. But once again, so the reason I'm brought this up is because I'm kind of heading towards my argument for whom I think potentially could win this election, is that I think demographics become very important. I think he skews towards a younger demographic.
And weirdly enough, not just like educated or uneducated or what, just young people.
Yep. In general, yeah, because they're using his technologies, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about Bill Maher? I wrote this down because I thought this was probably one of the best things I've heard all week. he and I don't know how much you ever watch of him or you guys out there listening, but I find him pretty funny, to be honest. But he suggested that Kamala Harris might lose, and he basically said if she loses, it's because of far left insanity. And what he said is progressives say, and I quote, "All white people are racist, all men are toxic, and all billionaires are evil." And his point was, maybe we should change the rhetoric. And that, that's a party-based thing, right? Because, if you just alienated all those classes of people, you got real problems.
I agree with you, bro. I don't have anything to add to that. As said, that I agree with that.
Right. I mean, so, that's just, it's, and he used an example, so I don't know if I brought this up in another podcast or not, but he used this example. He said, are you going to support taxpayer funded sex change operations for illegal aliens in prison? And his point was, and I would quote, is there anything that you would actually say, or that the far left would actually say, that you would say is fucking ridiculous? And my point is that she hasn't. Because she was asked that question.
I remember when they asked her that.
And she doesn't answer it. So is this a and I'm heading towards this direction. I'm trying to get you guys to come along with me a little bit. This is not about Harris. This is about the parties. Mm-hmm. And I guess we could talk about it right now, but in my opinion, one of the issues that we've got going on and the reason that we are so polarized is that you've got the Republican Party that I think doesn't, if you ask me, I don't think it exists anymore. It was hijacked by Donald Trump. It's the party of Trump at this point. The Republicans are sitting somewhere in the dugout, right? It was a baseball game, I think they're sitting in the dugout. They're not even they're not even in the game right now. And if anything, many of them, Liz Cheney as an example, who's out campaigning with Harris, they're sitting there waiting to be called into the game in some future thing when Trump's not around anymore. Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, I would argue that the Democratic Party is even worse than the Republican Party because they are still in play, but they have no idea how to play the game anymore. They don't know how to win. They listen to, it's almost as if they can't take a stand on anything. And it appears that Harris has been coached into this. Like, she hasn't answered a question in 3 months. So, her answer to a question, I could ask her what she thinks of the economy or what she thinks of energy or what she thinks of the border crisis. And her answer is going to be, well, Donald Trump, what? What the hell does Donald Trump have to do with this? So, she's just been coached to just turn it around, say he's bad, and you got to not vote for him.
She does it so much now that it stands out. Because she'll literally go 3 questions in a row and she'll say, well, Trump, within the first 3 or 4 words of her first sentence.
Take it from somebody like me that has listened to every single thing that she has said. Literally in the last 3 weeks, I've watched every single press conference. Well, not press conference. She doesn't do those, but like every single opportunity she's had to speak at anything that's been played online. And that's all I hear. So that is, but I don't, but you and I have talked about this. Maybe that's a weakness of hers, but this is not coming from her. This is coming from her party. And I would argue that the Democrats are, Bill Maher's using a good example here. So if somebody in that party, and I don't know what percentage, but let me ask you this, Phil, what percentage of the people in the United States, and I'm not saying, by the way, that this happened, because obviously this is somewhat of a Republican talking point that's a bunch of bullshit. But let's hypothetically say that, there was an illegal alien in jail that the taxpayers were going to fund to do a sex change operation. What percentage of the people do you think in the United States would think that's a good idea?
Less than 10%.
Okay. So is that a number that is arguably low enough that she could say, I'm not in support of that?
Yes.
Exactly. So, but she hasn't. My point is that she cannot take a stand against what seems to be a super far left progressive movement that, by all everybody else's account has died, right? I mean, a lot of that stuff has gone the wayside, right? I mean, even things like, Black Lives Matter is an example, and the whole Me Too thing. I mean, both of them, Black Lives Matter just went to, didn't they file for bankruptcy and they're out of business? They stole a bunch of money. That whole thing was right. I mean, that whole thing, the organization anyways, was a sham. And then, so all of these things that came, this okay, another example, because I listen to my Montana radio station, and they're running ads hot and heavy. Like every 5 minutes, there's a political ad because the Senate race is so greatly contested in Montana between John Tester, who's a sitting Democrat, and Tim Sheehy, who's the Republican, who by all accounts is going to win. And his ads are constantly talking about John Tester supporting women playing in men's sports. Mm-hmm. Now, I might be an idiot, and I'm sure I am, and you guys can write comments below if I am, but I am. Does anybody support men playing in women's sport? It seems like common sense that we wouldn't support that.
If you're asking, do a majority? No.
Yeah. So,
but most of these social issues we're discussing, it's not like a large minority, like 49%. It's a very, very small minority that is controlling the outcomes of these social issues.
So, and that's my point. So my point here is that the failure, I think, in the Democratic Party is that they have been ineffective at choosing the issues that matter, number one, and number two, are actually supported by some fair amount of people that's going to make a difference. So, a fringe on either side, and by the way, there's both directions. I mean, you could have fringes on the right side as well, and they do, and they've got some crazy ideas as well. My argument that that's not the Republican Party problem. This is the Republican Party problem is that they don't exist, that Donald Trump has hijacked it.
Well, the funny thing is, while you were describing what the Democrats need to do, I was like, oh, they need their version of a Donald Trump, because that's what happened. Donald Trump came in and cherry-picked the things he did like about being a Republican, and then he took some of the little minor things that he disagreed with, and he made them make sense to the majority of people.
That's right.
So if the Democrats were to ever do it, they would have to get a person they would have to have their version of a Donald Trump, because the only reason it worked for Donald Trump was he couldn't have been like just he couldn't have been anybody else. It had to be somebody that when he says, hey, this new way, he has a track record of doing things his way. Like Harris couldn't have come in talking about a new way. You understand what I'm saying?
I totally understand. Yeah.
People fear the new way coming from somebody with no track record. But if you've got a track record of something and you say, hey, we're going to do something new here, people are more, they'll entertain the thought more. You agree with that?
I totally agree.
So They can't just change their agenda. They have to find a Trump. The closest thing they got is like maybe a Bernie Sanders who has voted with the Democrats, but never
beats
been
to his own drum.
Right. So there's very few people, because the Democrats, they crack the whip on you. You got to agree to everything we into, or you out.
Yeah.
So it's hard. And going back to Bernie Sanders again, somebody who was kind of doing what you said, they just decided you ain't going to be the president. They just got rid of him. After all is said and done, they can decide who they want. So,
well, they just did. I mean, we're in an election where that just happened. I mean, let's be honest.
Hey. So,
all right.
It's a difficult thing. You have to have the right person with the right message.
Right. All right. So so now we've kind of talked about that. Phil, can you, this is a housekeeping. Is my audio and video still perfect? Because I have a weird glitch going on my computer.
I don't hear anything.
How about seeing?
I'm looking at the meters. Everything is fine.
A video is good.
Yeah, I'd let you
Okay.
know.
All right. All right. So moving forward, let's talk about. Well, we're going to get to what we think is going to happen. How do you want to handle that, Phil?
Okay, let's start with the actual voting because it's already started, and it seems like when people do crazy stuff, it's always in the Pacific Northwest near me.
Yeah. Oh, the burning voting
Ballot
boxes.
voting boxes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's right near you.
So,
Phil, where were you last week?
hey, bro, I'm not even gonna get into no kind of conversation like that. Oh, way, no way. They don't play about stuff like that.
No, they do not.
No. Yeah, they are looking for them. They found out who he was. This is why I tell people that the crimes that they don't catch are the crimes they don't pursue.
Mm-hmm.
Because they caught him. They figured out who he was, what his license plate was, and everything quick.
Yep. Well, I read an interesting article. They said they were, I think when they ran all the information on the car, which I don't even think they had a license plate. They had the car, the kind of car. They had narrowed it down to like, it could have been 126 people or something with that car in that area, you know, blah, blah, blah. They probably went and knocked on everybody's door. Who knows how they did it, but they're working on it. But let me ask you this question. So here this is what on my mind. How did you, or how are you going to sit here on this podcast and talk to these many people out there? And make a prediction. What are you basing your prediction on? Let's talk about that.
I am coming to this prediction based off of my eyes.
Okay.
Um,
So when you say eyes, meaning what? Like you going out and talking to people?
When I'm driving, do I see stickers for Harris or Biden? Do I see for Trump? When I'm driving through neighborhoods, do I see Harris or Trump? When I hear about events, what I hear about those events, what happens when I go different places and talk to different people and interact with people, listening to forums that either agree with me or disagree with me and hearing what those people say and just what I see with my eyes. I'm not following the polls so much. Matter of fact, I refute the polls generally. And generally, when the election comes, my prediction is more accurate than the polls.
Okay. So for me to answer that question, I'm similar to you. I think there's a little bit of gut feeling involved in what you just said.
Exactly. I just another word for it. Gut feeling. Yep.
Yep. And I would agree with that. I've been looking at polls. I've looked at every single poll that exists. I'm not going to lie. I've looked at the betting market. I've looked at what we call, I don't know what you want to call them, election predictor people, you know, like the guy that predicts it on his keys to the White House and all this stuff. I've kind of listened to what everybody's had to say. And then there obviously is a little bit of the pundit. You can listen to shit. I mean, if you turn on MSNBC and listen to Rachel Maddow, you know that obviously Kamala Harris is going to win. And then you turn the channel to Fox News and you listen to, Sean Hannity. Obviously, Donald Trump's going to win. So, there's a little bit of that. The two polls, it's not so many polls that I'm following. I'm looking at my screen right now because there was an update here about an hour ago. I follow Nate Silver to some extent. And Nate Silver, if you're not familiar with him, used to run the 538, which I think got bought by ABC News. It's pretty much a conglomeration of polls, and they've got a bunch of statistics and whatnot. So the latest update right now, so we're 4 days out, is from Nate Silver is saying that Kamala Harris's chance of winning is 46%. 46.2 compared to Donald Trump's is 53.4. Now, obviously, that's pretty deadlocked. That's pretty close, as they even say, close to a coin toss. And they go on to give you the predictions in each of the states, because obviously, remember, this doesn't come down to, this is not a popularity contest in America anyways, because we do a electoral college vote. But I guess the general thing I'm going to pull out of this particular thing, the polls, is that if you listen to the polls, and I'm not suggesting that that's the only place to do it, but if you listen to the polls, this election is virtually deadlocked. But let me clarify that one bit. What it's saying is that it's going to be really, really close race. It doesn't mean necessarily that there's not going to be an electoral blowout one way or the other, because in theory, Donald Trump could win the 7 swing states by 2 votes and slaughter her in the electoral college, or vice versa, right? So that's not all indicative for sure. I mean, they've got total nationwide based on all polls.
Are we in our predictions?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not just outlining how we're going to get there.
Okay.
I'm talking about one thing, because I think a lot of people, the reason I wanted to address this is I think a lot of people follow polls. And what I want to bring out of this is that, generally speaking, right now, the polls show them pretty much a dead heat. There's almost no poll that's not within the margin of error. And nationwide, we're like, Harris is 48.5, Trump's 47.4. I mean, that's tied. And then if you go down to each state, it's ridiculous. Like every state that's a contested state is within a point or two of each other. So all within the margin of error. The reason I bring that up is that polls, unfortunately, I think you said it, Phil, are not super accurate. For one, the margin of error, or the sampling, community is too small, and there's skew to polls. And I don't think people know this, that some of the polls are even controlled by organizations that have let's just say they have a dog in the race, right?
Yeah. The majority.
The majority, yep. Which is why I look at Nate Silver's and 538 a little bit more, only because they're aggregating them, so they're taking into account skews both ways, maybe.
And the way they word the questions has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Often I'll see a poll and I'm like, well, if they had asked it this way, they would have got a completely different.
Sure. Yep, you're right. And then if you go to the betting market right now is showing Donald Trump up by a fair amount. But that is another thing that cannot be necessarily trusted, because some of it, if you know how, Vegas works, it's, they're trying to make money for the house, right? So there's methodology behind that, and there's big bets that potentially come in. In fact, there was one that, huge bets came in from overseas. A huge bet of a significant amount of money is going to skew, that quote poll back and forth unrealistically as well. Anyways.
It's so far out that they'll skew their own poll to get money on a particular side of the bet.
Exactly.
Like you said, they're looking out for the house.
Exactly.
So they want to keep the money even.
That's right. So I just wanted to let our listeners out there understand that we're looking at this in many different ways, and that's some of them. And then I look, let's call it gut feeling. I go and look at because I do think the election's going to be close. I look at here's a headline that just came across: Jake Paul is endorsing Donald Trump. You might just poo-poo that, but once again, here's another super famous YouTuber that skews to who? Young male
man.
Audience. There you go. So you get the theme here going on, right?
And Mike, we're being politically correct. Let's be more specific. Who is his demographic even more specifically?
Jake Paul?
Yeah.
Bros.
Okay. And of those bros, let's get tighter into it. Who is his demographic?
I don't know. Well, I mean, they're young, usually young males that are into fighting and edgy. His YouTube channel has always been edgy. Now he's into boxing and fighting, right? He wants to fight Mike Tyson. So,
Okay, I'll leave it like that. Okay.
well, no, I don't know. I mean, what else is it? No, give me more.
Well, we can group it and stop it at males, young males. But if we were to define those young males, I would say if we were to do a testosterone test, they would have higher testosterone.
Yes, that's kind of what I meant by bros. But yeah, yep, agreed. That's right.
They are courting the straight male voter.
Yes. Yep.
And that's why guys like Rogan and Jake Paul, their endorsements are important, because generally men who are can be influenced are usually influenced most by the masculinity of the other gentleman.
Yeah, but let me cut in there because I listened to the part of the podcast today with JD Vance and Jake and Joe Rogan talking about gay males.
Well, they have to.
Well, no, but the reason that some of them are skewing towards the Republican Party is because of what we were just talking about a little bit ago about the far left craziness, that they just don't want that kind of attention, right? So they just want to live normal lives like most of us do.
So let me be clear what I'm saying. I'm not saying, when I say straight men, I'm saying the persona or aura of how a straight man carries himself.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of gay men who follow that same criteria. So
right.
I'm not referring.
Yep, understand. Yep.
I'm not expressing it good.
Yep, I understand.
I'm not
what you're
referring
saying.
to who they actually want to sleep with.
Right. Yep, makes sense. Yeah, and you're right.
Because the kind of masculinity that I'm talking about, there are actually gay guys that are probably more masculine than straight guys.
Mm-hmm.
So just clean this up for me, Mike, because I don't know how to explain what.
No, you're right. You're right, and I think that's actually what JD Vance and Joe Rogan were talking about, is that they just want to quote, and maybe this is a Mikeism. They quote want
basically they like boys, but they still men.
Yes, and they want to fit into a more traditional, I guess maybe is the best word I could use, traditional quote male society.
Yes.
And they just don't. They're not trying to draw unneeded attention to a difference, because look, we all have differences, and rather than dividing, they want to come together, I guess is the best way to say that. So yes, I understand what you're saying. It's not a sexual preference thing. It's a masculine testosterone thing.
Yeah, because the more I've been investigating this, there is a large portion of the gay community who don't like the effeminate man,
yes,
or
that's right.
the man who will the transgender or whatever.
Well, I just saw an entry,
and they want to disassociate from that.
Yep. I just saw an interesting poll that they said that in the gay population, that Trump was actually pulling higher numbers than he has in the last two elections. So that's an interesting statistic. And you also got to wonder, who the hell does all these polls all day long? Like, I don't know that I ever would have thought of, let's how about we poll gay people to find out who they're voting for? Like, but this is the bottom line is, this is where we are, right? We are at the point now that everything matters. And I'll transition. This is a good segue. Let's transition into what we think is going to happen. I was kind of setting up the the parameters of like what we've looked at to come to a conclusion. So now let's talk about what we think's going to happen and why.
Okay.
Because that's what everybody wants to know, right?
So when you say what happened, you mean, so just basically get to who I think is going to win or lose.
Who's going to win the election and why?
Okay, you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. I think
Put it all on Phil. Ladies and gentlemen, drum roll, here we go.
I think Trump's going to win.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a big number electoral-wise. But when you look at the actual votes, it'll be a lot closer. And when I say a lot closer, I'm saying it'll be a lot closer than what the Electoral College reveals. I still think that Trump will win with a significant number.
Who do you think is going to win the popular vote?
I think Trump's going to win the popular vote.
Wow. Okay.
And my reasons are pockets hurting make people do things they normally wouldn't do. And everybody I talk to, whether they're a business owner, whether they work a 9 to 5, they part of hustle culture, whatever, everybody I talk to, the past few years been hard in comparison to the last 4 years.
Well, and that came out in the campaigning this week, right? That, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, right? That's the saying. And the answer is, in your opinion, I think that most people think the answer is no.
I think anybody who is giving you an honest answer, factual answer, has to say that, like I even spoke about it last week. You may not, like, let's say you own a business and your business is doing better in the last few years when you look at the numbers versus 4 years. Okay, that's fine, but you're an anomaly. You can't tell me that you can't see and you haven't experienced or know people who are going through something. It's kind of hard to hide. You might be making all the money in the world, but you still going in buying $10 eggs.
Yeah.
And I'm joking, but like 18 eggs is $7.99. It's $7.99.
Oh, it's crazy. Let's put it this way. It's definitely more than it was 4 years ago.
So I believe that he will capture a lot of older voters who are retired, who like, this is all I get every month and it's not going to change. So the only thing I can make change are the prices. So I think he's going to get a lot of older voters.
Okay, so number one, then you feel economy is the number one issue.
Yes, because it's like the economy is a tree, and when you start going up the tree and into the branches and all those little leaves, it affects any of the other things you're going to talk about. Let's say your thing is abortion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right now some people have to travel to another place to have an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't afford to hop on a flight and go to another state to have your abortion, that's a problem. There's no getting around money in your pocket. It's just not. Like my big joke that I tell now is the best way to know what's going on with this economy is just go in to a grocery. I'm sorry, Mike.
Go right into the garbage truck. No, I'm kidding.
Go to the gas station and go into the little store with a $20 bill and see how much you can get with a $20 bill out of that gas station store. And
it's not going to fill a bag.
It might not fill your hand.
That's right. That's the truth.
So that's one thing. The other thing is we say that we diverse and this, that, and the other, but okay, let's look at this across the ethnicities. Mm-hmm. Across the ethnicities in America, in general, the way they are brought up, a lot of the social issues are moral issues to them. So there are people who may have been like, well, I'm not really with the Democrats because I think they're racist, or I'm not with the Democrats because of whatever you think your reason is.
Yep.
But the way I was brought up or my faith can't allow me to vote for someone who is for abortion and some of the lifestyle issues.
Yep.
So I just think there's so many little things where Trump is going to chip away at voters who normally would vote Democrat, but I don't see people on the that being the opposite, chipping away at the people who are for Donald Trump. Trump is going to take from Harris. Harris ain't taking for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is she does not give off president in any way. She doesn't come off as an intellect. She doesn't come off as a great orator. She doesn't talk. She doesn't come off as someone who can handle confrontation well, being out of a controlled situation. I don't see anything presidential about her. I mean, not a one. I mean, I'm literally trying to think of something, and I generally can. She dresses nice and looks the part.
Yep.
But once she opens her mouth and her track record,
well, she doesn't really have a track record.
But that's my point. But the few little pieces of track record she has are questionable and are issues to some people. There's some people who their rule is, I would never vote for a prosecutor. She is. So let me tell you something I never told you. I have always thought the only reason why they picked her is because anybody who was an actual candidate that thought they could win, there's no way they were going to say, I'm going to take these 3 months and run for president. They'd rather her flop, him get his 4 years, and they run for president in 4 years. So she's basically a scapegoat, in my opinion, for the loss they're about to take.
Well, she certainly wasn't chosen. I mean, chosen by the people.
Right. But I believe, I mean, think about it, Mike. If you wanted to be president, that's your goal. And you feel like you have the qualities to do so, would you have been like, okay, you only got 3 months, Mike, but we can get you in there. Would you take that, or would you wait until you had a fair shot where you can, now I can, for 4 years, if she becomes president for 4 years, I can rag about what she does. If Trump becomes president, I can rag about his presidency when I'm in debates and I actually have a chance of winning. So I don't think I believe she might have been the 19th or 20th person they had in their mind. Nobody of any substance was going to agree to run for president in 3 months.
Mm-mm. Not from certainly not from the outside. No, too risky.
And yeah, that's it. I don't think she ever had a chance, and she sealed not having a chance by actually opening her mouth and people getting to know her in the last 3 months.
So let me ask you this question. So you're predicting Donald Trump to win. Is it more about the party's views, or is it more about the candidates, do you think?
Half and half.
Okay.
Half and half.
Yeah.
Maybe not actually 50-50, but a large portion of it is of both. It might be 70-30, 60-40, but it's a large portion on each side of that issue, in my opinion.
Yep.
There's some people who are looking at it as, I'm a God-fearing Christian and I can't, hold on, Mike. I'm sorry, Mike. Where was I?
You said you were talking about God-fearing Christians, which is starting to scare me here.
There are people who, I'm not calling them this, I'm saying self-proclaimed.
Right.
They can't vote for somebody who is for some of the issues that she is putting out there.
Absolutely.
It's just that simple. There are some people who are misogynists, and it's just no way they're going to vote for a woman.
Right.
There are some people who are racist, and there's no way they're going to vote for a person that's a person of color.
Which, by the way, is something that we have not talked about much. And I wonder, is it because we don't think it's a huge factor, or we just haven't, there's so much else going on? But remember, she's a woman and she's of color.
I think that she has helped not, people haven't had to go there because she has so many other flaws. It's just like a waste of time.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yep.
It's like, okay, that's a tool to use, but it's not one of the best tools because she's just not any good.
Right.
Let's stick to that.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense.
Because there are some men who are saying that they're upset that people think I wouldn't vote for a woman, that really wouldn't vote for a woman, but she's so bad that he's able to protect his decision by saying
for the next time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You can hold that card in your pocket and not use it.
But I have not really actually heard too many guys just outright say, I would never vote for a woman.
No.
I have actually seen a majority of men very insulted at the idea that they can't discern between skills, talent, ability, and sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Mike, what's your prediction? And
so, ladies and gentlemen, that was Phil.
Trump in a landslide.
So let's just So Phil is picking Trump in a electoral win, and a popular vote win. You said,
but not by a lot. Maybe the Electoral College, but I don't know that any of us can really accurately predict that so well because, like we said, he could win by 3 votes in 7 states and get an Electoral College landslide, but really be so super close anyways. But yeah, all right. So what do I think? Oh boy, here we go. You guys ready for this? I think Mickey Mouse is going to win. Mike, you just disconnected. Mike is having technical difficulty right now.
I'm back. Sorry, guys. I hit the mute button. I do that. I get super excited and I start touching the microphone. So I think the election's going to come down to 2 main things. I think number one, this is coming down to the turnout. Who turns out? This is the most important thing, I think, in this to be able to predict this election. And I think that is separated by 2 different groups of people for 2 different reasons. And we've already talked about it on the podcast here today. Obviously, Donald Trump is actively courting a younger generation, a younger population. And that is, over the course of history, has been the group of people that has been a challenge to get to come out and actually vote. So if they turn out in any big numbers, this is definitely going to help Donald Trump. The other big thing, and I might get some argument here from some people, but I think that this election is a referendum in the women's reproductive rights. So the question I have, and what I mean by that is Roe versus Wade being overturned and the current issue with abortion rights, is that going to bring out enough women to vote against Trump So, because you got to remember this: if every woman voted against Trump, clearly, obviously, he's going to lose, right? I think 52% of the voting population is women, right? It's higher women than men. So what percentage of the women cannot overcome the conservative Republican standpoint on abortion rights? So to me, it's a referendum on that. It's very simple, in my opinion. If Trump wins, to me, that means, I don't want to say it's not important, but it is not as big of an issue as some would like you to believe. Because remember, let's be honest here for a second, Roe versus Wade was, whether you believe in it or not, was a federal thing, and what the goal was is to send it back to the states. So it wasn't taking away rights; it was simply sending them to the states to decide what the rights were. But that's a tangent. That's going down a dusty road. But what I'm telling you is, those are the two factors that are going to determine who's going to win this presidential race, whether or not the reproductive rights are at the forefront. Because what you said earlier, I would agree. I think the number one motivator in this election is the economy. And if I had to answer the question, are we better off 4 years ago than we are today? But than 4 years ago, I would say no. I would say that most people out there are not in as good of a situation. I think the economy, I think prices of things, I think jobs, I think real estate, I think interest rates, I think all of these things. So that obviously is usually goes against the incumbent. And in this case, she's as close to an incumbent as we're going to get. The problem that I see is, as we talked about earlier in the week with the Madison Square Garden show, he has a little bit, I mean, I don't know if you see this, but like he has turned into a little bit of a bro fest. And that's not helping. That's not going to help get any women either. I mean, let's be honest. So, I
disagree.
Really? Okay. Because I mean, at that event, he had 90% of the people that came on the stage were guys. He obviously, based on that, what we just talked about, the podcast and whatnot, are courting younger males. So I guess what I would say is this is going to come down to those two issues. Who actually shows up at the polls? Do more young people or do more women that are pissed off at getting their reproductive rights taken away? And that's the answer, right? That's the question that we got to answer. So from what I see going on, my gut feeling, and looking at all those things I talked about, whether it's the polls or walking around chatting people and all this stuff, I think that, and we've talked about this earlier, it's going to come down to a small handful of states, probably one state. It's probably Pennsylvania, more than likely. And right now, I hate to say this, but if you had asked me to answer this question, do this podcast well, let's put it this way: if you had asked me when Biden was still in the race, I would have told you Trump's going to win by a landslide. And then when Harris got into the race, I was like, this could get closer. And then after she started getting closer and closer and closer, then it became neck and neck. And then I think we got some semblance of, well, how is it going to shake out? And I think Trump started pulling ahead again. And I think in this last week, the race has tightened up a little bit because now we're down to you got to make a decision. Look, getting tied to Puerto Ricans being bad people and having that, that was poor because Pennsylvania has 480,000 Puerto Ricans in it. And, as we know, you could win Pennsylvania by 2,000 votes. So God forbid, in Trump's case, 2,100 of them decide that, they don't like him anymore. That could be the end of his run based on that comment that he didn't make, by the way. So my prediction is, on a gut feeling, and this is now at this point, it's based on a gut feeling, is that Trump is going to win I think he's going to win by a very tight margin. And I think that Harris is going to win the popular vote, and Trump is going to win the electoral college. But I don't know if he's going to win it by a little, or there certainly is potential. If the polls are in line with the last two presidential elections, Trump's going to win by a landslide electorally.
Mike, you gotta give a prediction.
I just said Trump's going to win the election.
Yeah, but the way you gave yours,
it's covering all the bases.
If the polls say
no, I'm saying my prediction is on gut feeling that Trump wins.
Decide,
hold on.
Decide everything. You decide what are the polls.
I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. Because from my gut feeling, similarly to yours, from being on the road and traveling, remember I brought up two issues. One is reproductive rights, and one is young people turning out. What I have seen is that it would appear that the Trump campaign is doing everything that they need to do to pull out a younger audience, whether that's 1% of them, 2% of them. I don't know what it's going to be, but I think they're going to succeed. Look, I think people will listen to Joe Rogan. That's
okay,
just the bottom line. So hold on. The reproductive rights thing,
mm-hmm.
There are a number of women in America that believe that it should be left up to the states. I think that's just a simple fact. I think the Democrats are missing that argument. They're making it as if you take Roe versus Wade, it's no abortion. Well, that is not what the law said in the first place. Okay, if you're any kind of scholar, you know that that's not what it was about, right? Just because you take it away at a federal mandated level does not change what goes on at the states. And there's a lot of women that legitimately want the decision to be made by their community, by their local community. And in what you brought up earlier, their cultural backgrounds, their moral beliefs, or whatever. I would argue that somebody in the middle of Alabama does not necessarily have the same background or the same moral beliefs as somebody that's in Boston, Massachusetts. It's just the way it is. So those people are probably not going to be dissuaded against voting for Donald Trump. And so you can't make the argument that it's just women. When women are going to decide the election, that's a strong statement. You know what I mean? So I think that overall, I don't think that is as big. Look, it's not as big of an issue as economics or as our border, which affects our economics, or warfare, which affects our economics, and all these other things. At the end of the day, if we're all dead or broke or living under a bridge, you don't have any rights, period, let alone reproductive rights. So that's what I think.
People seem to have forgotten that in 2016, when Trump was running, the big rhetoric was he's going to he's going to get rid of Roe versus Wade.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And after the election, when he won, what was one of the big shockers that they said as far as voting? How many women voted for Trump?
Yeah.
Particularly white women.
Yep.
So, like I said, the shock was how many of them he got. So
I know.
If we actually look at how they have voted in the past, it would say that they would vote that way in this one.
I would agree. Yep.
So
yeah, because you can't necessarily. I mean, I know the left wants to give you a narrative that he's misogynistic, he's said bad things, but we knew all of that before. That's not new. We knew that in day one.
And Mike, let's get to something that's not ever said. I haven't heard it said yet. We did discuss that there's a small, powerful few that pushes ideology and social issues onto the masses, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the effects of that is if you're around a campfire or at a gathering and talking with a group of people, whatever, and you're a woman and abortion comes up, most women, if it's just women, you could be against abortion, but you're not going to speak up amongst a group of women that you don't know because you feel like you're going to get clipped at the legs.
Sure.
But because there are a lot of women who don't speak up, that are silent because women don't like confrontation too much. There are a lot of women who are not with abortion. They're not with it at all, let alone it to the states or whatever. They feel like it shouldn't be no abortion, period. It shouldn't even be up for discussion. But
well, and that, by the way, that's particularly age-based too. You remember, like this doesn't there's a section. You know, you've got older women that are well past that age, anyways, that may or may not care any longer, and then you've got young ones.
I was going next. Yep.
What's that?
That's where I was going next.
Exactly. Yep. No, and there may be, and maybe on contrary to that, there may be young ones that you would, on the surface, you would seem they'd be super concerned with it because it's something that's upcoming. But like, let's just be honest for a second. You know how that goes. You know, like when you were 18 years old, you thought you were Superman. You're gonna, you know, I'm like, you weren't thinking about stuff going on when you were 30.
And Mike, I have read too many articles, read too many autobiographies, watched too many interviews, and actually talked to too many women personally who have all told stories about having an abortion and how that was the worst thing they ever did in their life. Not even necessarily saying like it was something happened.
Right. They regret it.
Right. And they are against it. So I think there's a huge silent majority. Women who have had abortions, so they feel like a hypocrite if they speak up, and women who have always been against it. But feminists are strong amongst women. I have observed it over decades. When there are feminists among a group of women, they overpower the rest of the women, and the other women usually follow. And if they don't follow, they shut up about their differences.
Yep.
You agree with that?
I totally agree with that.
And that's what happened in the 60s. That's how the feminist thing happened in the beginning.
Yeah.
Was a bunch of strong women. Got a bunch of weaker women to go with something that they didn't even know what they was doing.
Right. Well, when that's not just that isn't just a woman thing. Obviously, that's every issue or event that's ever occurred in all of humanity. Pretty much, it's always strong people getting the weaker to follow. Right. I mean, so that's why I think now. Remember, there's one thing that we didn't say here. Like, obviously, it isn't. We're not talking about sticking to this issue. We're not talking about women in America necessarily right now, though. Either you got to remember, we're talking about women in those 7 swing states. Because a woman in Montana it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because Donald Trump's already won that state. So the question is, take Pennsylvania.
I think he got Pennsylvania, man.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, is that another prediction?
I was waiting, but I'm predicting he wins it. And that's why I was saying you wasn't giving details of your prediction. If I'm going to be wrong, I'm going to be completely wrong.
Good. Okay.
So here,
you think he's going to, yep.
Not only do I think he's going to win, I think that the media or the actual government or somebody's going to withhold Pennsylvania, the results till late.
Ooh, but that was my next question I was going to ask you. When are we going to find out? When are we going to find out who wins?
Okay, you go first.
I actually, I know maybe this is a pie in the sky. I actually think we're going to find out on Tuesday. Well, or that night. I think we're going to find out before 3:00 in the morning, probably. Okay. I don't think it's going to be that close. I agree. I somewhat agree with you.
You got to pick a time frame so you can either be right or wrong.
I think it's going to be between midnight and 3 a.m. that it's going to become. By the way, I'm not suggesting that we're going to have necessarily somebody is going to concede, but I'm saying that we're going to have a damn good idea, and it's going to be largely called by the networks between midnight and 3 a.m.
You weaseled back out of it.
No, I just said between midnight and 3. What do you want? What do you want me to say?
You said unless I want
No. Unless I just said I said it's possible no one has conceded, but that doesn't mean Donald Trump never conceded the last election ever to this day.
Okay, so I think it's going to be done by about 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, which is
10 p.m. 10 p.m. Eastern.
And that's my conservative estimate.
Wow. Phil, you are radical here. So what I'm hearing from you is Donald Trump wins. He wins easy. He wins popular vote. He wins electoral college. He wins Pennsylvania, and he wins before 10 o'clock Eastern.
So, Mike, can I tell a little story about my travels during the election, or should I keep that to myself?
Your travels during the election?
Last time Trump was running.
Oh.
You know what?
Yep. No, you can say it.
Okay. I'm talking to you guys now. The people who know me, who have followed me on social media and know how I travel and how long I travel. So you know I'm not just making up some story. During the time that Trump was running for president, I was traveling across America, traveling to all 48 contiguous states. I went to all.
Was this 2016 or 2020?
When did
the
he
original
run?
one? You're talking about the first time.
No, I'm sorry. When he ran and lost.
Ran and lost. Okay, that 2020.
I'm sorry, but from 2016 to 2018, I'm traveling during this whole time, every state. And for people who don't know how I travel, when I'm traveling through these different states, I'm not on I-90 or I-40 or something like that. I go through all the little small towns. I go through back roads and on trails and stuff all across America. So there are people who have traveled all over America, but they don't travel it like me. All they really can tell you about is the big cities and a few other little places. All the little places in between, that's where I travel. And during those years leading up to the election, getting closer, so I'm going to go with the last 2 years, that's when they really start running their election.
Mm-hmm.
I did not see anything but Trump posters and stickers all across America. I didn't talk to anybody and hear any other name other than I'm voting for Trump. He was the only person I saw. It was like every state I went into, I'd happen upon some store that was a Trump store in the middle of nowhere, and it's lines of people going in to buy stuff. And I'm like, is there even enough people in this city to have this many people in this store? And I could go on and on. The basis of what I'm saying is, there is doubt in my mind about that election. And I'm not going by what the news said. I have a very, very unique view on that election because I literally saw the people of America across America in those small towns and everything. And it was solid Trump all the way. I, to this day, have still never seen a Biden sticker. I don't know what it looks like.
Well, okay, but in fairness, small town America is always going to be for Donald Trump.
But what I'm saying is it was almost exclusively every small town across the whole United States.
Well, I believe that's still true. The thing is, though, where you don't see
and when I say
signs,
small towns, I'm not just saying, I'm talking about every size of town other than the big cities.
Right. But the big cities are where you're going to get the blue. Yeah, but that's where you're going to get the blue come from. So, like, let's take Pennsylvania for a second. You know, Philadelphia is where, a good majority of the people are. That's going to obviously skew far, far left, or much farther left than the rest of Pennsylvania. So if you and I were driving through Pennsylvania and we're driving on back roads, we're going to see Trump signs everywhere. because it's it's rural. But you're not going to see Harris signs because, well, shit, you can't even put up a sign in a damn city unless you're hanging out your window.
Mike, I'm not going to argue with you about this for one reason.
Okay.
I am not going to be the black guy on social media defending the election for Trump, and the white guy is defending against it. That is not going to happen today.
Yeah, I don't know that we're going to do that, but but let's get back to it. You and I are generally in agreement what's going to happen, though. We both said the same thing. I think it's going to be closer than you think it is, but I think the result. I think you and I agree on the result.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I think if it's closer, it's going to be shenanigans is the reason.
Well, I'm crossing my fingers that it's not because, because the other reason, obviously, after Tuesday, we got to move forward, right?
So I want to ask you a straightforward question, Mike.
Yeah.
Do you think Trump lost last time?
I think Trump lost last time.
Okay.
I mean, I do. I don't. He may not have lost by as much as they. Well, let's put it this way: when the news comes out this week that there were states that, you got lawsuits going on where they're going to throw out 150,000 ballots from illegal. It makes you question. For one, why are they there in the first place? And what happens if the court didn't order that? Right? And if that happened in those 7 states last time, well, hypothetically, let's say that happened last time in those 7 states, yes, then you could use the argument that Trump should have won, possibly, if they were skewed the other way. I just don't know that. I don't have the information on that. And maybe someday we'll get it, but...
And for the folks who are listening and they're like, oh, God, he's a conspiracy theorist. That's cool. That's cool. But I just want to educate the audience if they're unaware. We have, through the history of the United States, financed, helped in some form or fashion, other countries alter their vote. And you're like, well, that's other places. True. But the reason why we came in and had some kind of effect on their vote is because that had some kind of effect on the government of the United States and its power. Right? So why would you think they have some kind of rule where they're like, oh, no, we only do it for other people, but we wouldn't do it.
Well, and the other thing that, to be honest, it comes up is that we've never been this close before. So, so if there was a bunch of rigging and a bunch of crooked stuff going on in an election, let's say it was, I don't know, 50 years ago, they just, oftentimes they weren't as close. Right now, we are in a position where 100,000 illegal or dead people vote. That makes a difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not going to deny that there's a potential for that problem. I mean, like I said, just this week, we've had 2 lawsuits where they are throwing out ballots in, I forget which state. Is that Virginia? I think it was Virginia. And the argument that I heard after I saw this and I started reading about it was like lame as hell. How they got in there in the first place. So then you start scratching your head, go, wait a minute here. Why do we have like 162,000 votes that are bullshit that we're going to throw out now? But if the court hadn't ordered it, we're not gonna? What? Huh?
There's a lot of BS.
And it doesn't mean all 162,000 were for one side, obviously, but the likelihood is that it could be skewed for sure.
There's a lot of BS on both sides as far as who gets put on the list, and there's a lot of BS from both sides on taking people off the list.
I think we can all agree that we should be able to come up with a much better, smoother voting process that gives us all more confidence. Because I think there is a lack of confidence, probably more on the Trump side, but I think there's some lack of confidence on both sides.
Mike, we're never going to be invited on CNN or Fox, because we can't just stick to a side and defend it.
No, but okay. But in summary, for this entire podcast,
we need to be biased more.
The reason that why we're doing this is to hopefully, if it educates or stimulates one brain here. Now, I'm not going to be naive and think that you and I are going to sway anybody which way to vote, because we're not even trying to. We are encouraging everybody out there that's listening to go vote if you haven't. However, we're not trying to skew you one way or another. But hopefully, even if one person found out some tidbit of information or thinks about it more or saves that for next election and goes, I remember those guys talking about this. Maybe I should look at that. Then I won. Then I feel like I won.
My goal today was to do what I learned in grammar school about our government. I remember my teacher, she was teaching us, because we had to memorize the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and take a test. I think everybody had to do that.
Yep.
And the way she started the class was, we're going to talk about politics and our government, and you can see how fun it is to participate.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought into that until I actually found out. And I would like it to go back to that.
Exactly.
It's a fun thing to find out the details and make your choice for the greatest country in the fucking world.
Exactly. And I think they also taught us to question. Always question what's going on. Question it. Question whether or not you think this is real or it's not real, or somebody's skewing something. Question why they're doing it. Question why they support a policy. I mean, those are the things that I think are important. And I agree. It's the best fucking country on planet Earth, and that's why we're sitting here talking about this on an Overland podcast.
Bro, I meant that. I mean,
I agree.
It
was actually fun. I got to tell you, I've had a blast over the last month since we noticed our listenership has significantly increased when we started talking about politics. Now, obviously, this is an election year, so I can understand that to some extent, but I also understand it because people like, quote, controversy, right? So our numbers have gone up, but I'm excited that we've done it because I'm having fun with it. I don't know about you, but this is fun.
Yeah, when we first started doing it together, all of the emails were about, should I get a tent, or should I get a lift, or something like that?
Yeah. Do I need 2 max tracks or 4 max tracks on my truck? I'm not sure.
The moment, because we started off just a little tidbit of it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the very first tidbit, I got a bunch of people DM me, and nothing bad. They just had their opinion they wanted to give, or they wanted to get further opinion from me. So that's where people's heads are at right now.
Exactly. And as we've talked about on multiple podcasts, it's where your head should be, because all of this affects everything else that we could talk about. We could sit here and talk for an hour about what rooftop tent is the best rooftop tent to buy. But at the end of the day, unless we have a country that functions correctly and we have an economy that allows you to buy the rooftop tent, it's a moot issue. So, I mean, this is important stuff. So, get out there, vote. And, I guess it's going to be an interesting discussion, Phil, after the election happens, to review of what we just said today and what happened. And are we right, partly wrong? I don't know. We're just going to find out.
So are we still doing Tuesday? I'm sorry.
So we talked
Monday?
about this. We mentioned this to our listeners last week, and we're talking to you guys right now. I think what we're going to do is we talked about putting 4 podcasts out on Tuesday, election day, right?
Mm-hmm.
At different times of the day, right? Morning, afternoon, evening, late night. I think, right?
Yep.
And give you, and it'll be short ones. We'll do 15, 20 minutes probably, right?
20 minutes, that's long. If it says 20 minutes, definitely click on that one, because we must have really had something to say.
That's right. So we'll put out a schedule, we'll announce it, and and that way we can kind of give you live what's happening in it'll be one more thing you can listen to, because God knows you're probably going to get tired of listening to Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow and Brett Baer. So,
we're gonna have a different take than them.
Exactly. We're actually going to tell it like it is, because we'll be sitting here flipping networks.
Yeah, we'll actually probably be laughing at the things that they have to say.
Maybe.
Because I think one of the most fun things, you know what's going to be really fun, Mike? Whoever's losing, watch their news. The best.
Because I don't know if you guys remember, but their bias comes through the most when they realize what's going to happen, or they're about to make the final announcement. Because I can remember way back in 2016, I just remember watching MSNBC, and Rachel Maddow was damn ass crying on the set.
Bro,
right?
And they just looked lost, like, is this real? It was, oh my God. They didn't even understand why they lost. That was the worst part.
Nope. Yep. And in 2016, equally, Fox News was they had a depresso about an hour of like depression when they realized that Biden was going to win. So I mean,
I thought somebody was going to curse.
Yep. So then we're going to give you an opportunity to listen to two Overland guys on Election Day. So stay tuned for that. We'll put out the exact schedule, but. You guys are watching or listening and watching this right now. We got 4 days. God knows what could happen in 4 days.
And listen up, guys. We're just giving our opinions. We don't think our opinions are superior. I can't wait to see how many things I got wrong.
Exactly.
The point I'm getting to is we respect your opinion too. So wherever you're listening to this at, make sure to let us know.
That's right. Send us direct messages. Maybe we'll read some of the messages that come in. So send me you could send them anyway. Send them through Instagram, send them through YouTube, send them through don't matter. Send them any way you want to send them to us, and we will we'll answer or put up what your opinions are.
Well, for me, if you send me a DM, you need to make it clear that you're okay with me reading it, or I will not. That's why I don't read a lot of stuff.
Right. Or just say, or we'll read it we won't use your name anyways.
Right.
There we go. So that was our long-awaited podcast. I know you guys have been waiting a couple months. And ironically, look, it turns out Phil and I are predicting the same outcome. So let's see what happens.
All right, Mike, you got anything else you want to say?
Fasten your seatbelt. We'll see you on Tuesday.
All right, guys, you don't know what I'm going to say. Stay safe. Go vote. And hopefully we'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.